My husband put his mistress's name on the deed to our lake house. He forgot I was the one who paid for it. The lake house was supposed to be our dream. Every bonus I earned during 12 years as a corporate accountant went toward that place. I skipped vacations, drove the same old SUV for nearly a decade, and worked weekends during tax season just so we could finally afford it. My husband, Brian, loved telling people he'd built our future with his own hands, but the truth was a little less glamorous. He picked the paint colors and bought the grill. I paid every mortgage payment from the day we got the keys. One Saturday afternoon, I stopped by the county records office because I needed a copy of the property deed for our insurance renewal. The clerk printed the document, slid it across the counter, and smiled. I thanked her without looking down. It wasn't until I reached my car that I unfolded the paperwork. My stomach dropped instantly. The deed listed Brian and another woman named Emily Carter as joint owners. My name wasn't anywhere on the page. At first, I thought it had to be a clerical mistake. We'd bought the property while we were married, and I'd signed every closing document myself. I drove straight home, expecting an explanation that made sense. Instead, Brian froze the moment I placed the deed on the kitchen table. He didn't deny knowing Emily. He admitted she'd been his girlfriend for almost 2 years. According to him, adding her to the property was just paperwork because he planned to leave me eventually and wanted to simplify things. I couldn't believe the arrogance. He honestly expected me to quietly accept that the house I'd paid for had been turned into a gift for the woman he'd been cheating with. The next morning, I contacted the real estate attorney who'd handled our closing years earlier. After reviewing the documents, he frowned and asked a simple question. Did you ever sign a transfer authorizing ownership changes? I shook my head. He pulled copies from the county archive. Someone had submitted a notarized transfer deed 6 months earlier with a signature that looked similar to mine, but it wasn't mine. The attorney immediately noticed the notary's commission number had expired almost a year before the document was supposedly signed. What Brian thought was a clever shortcut had just become a much bigger problem. The investigation uncovered even more. Security footage from the title office showed Brian arriving with Emily on the day the paperwork was filed. They claimed I'd been traveling for work and that I'd already signed everything at home. The office accepted the documents without checking the expired notary information. One's handwriting expert compared the signature to my driver's license and dozens of bank records. The forgery became impossible to deny. Brian tried insisting Emily had handled the paperwork without his knowledge, but text messages recovered from his phone told a very different story. During the divorce hearing, Brian's attorney spent nearly an hour arguing that the deed should remain valid because of a filing error at the title office. Then my lawyer projected one message onto the courtroom screen. Brian had texted Emily, "Once the deed goes through, she'll never know until it's too late." Nobody spoke for several seconds. The judge quietly removed his glasses, looked directly at Brian, and asked, "Would you like to change any part of your testimony?" Brian stared at the floor. He never answered. The deed was declared fraudulent, Emily's ownership interest was erased, and the court awarded me the lake house because nearly every mortgage payment had come from my personal earnings. Brian also had to reimburse my legal fees after the judge ruled he'd acted in bad faith. Last month, I spent my first weekend at the lake since the divorce. I sat on the dock with a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise over the water, and realized the house finally felt peaceful again. It wasn't because Brian was gone. It was because the lies were, sometimes people think betrayal costs you everything. Sometimes, it simply clears the path for you to finally enjoy what was yours all along. Would you have taken Brian to court or sold the lake house and walked away? Yes or no?